6 months later, Marcus stood in the main hangar of New Haven Station watching as the latest group of refugee ships docked with their new home. The station was a marvel of human Valdrani cooperation. Human, engineering ingenuity combined with Valdrani materials, science to create something neither species could have built alone. The integration protocols are functioning within acceptable parameters, Zarathul reported, approaching from the control center. Her armor now bore the insignia of the Joint Defense Initiative, a symbol that represented the alliance forged in the aftermath of their desperate gambit in the ancient battlefield. Marcus smiled, wiping grease from his hands with a familiar gesture. In other words, everything's working perfectly, but you don't want to jinx it by saying so. Your species' tendency toward optimistic language has influenced my reporting style, she admitted, a hint of amusement in her voice. The past months had been a whirlwind of activity. Word of the human-Valdrani cooperation had spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring other species to reconsider their positions in the growing conflict with the Kethvar hegemony. The refugee ship Haven's Rest had become the flagship of a growing alliance fleet, her battle-scarred hull a symbol of determination against impossible odds. Marcus had found himself at the center of it all, not as a hero or leader, but as what he'd always been, someone who fixed things. The integration of human and Valdrani technologies required constant innovation, and his workshop had become a crucible where impossible solutions were forged daily. Status report on the new arrivals? He asked, watching as families disembarked from the refugee ships. 2,000 Centauri civilians from the Outer Rim, approximately 500 Harmony Collective refugees, and, Zarathul paused, consulting her datapad, 37 human children from the Kepler colony evacuation. Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came with thoughts of displaced children. Any family connections aboard the station? 17 have relatives already here. The others will be placed with volunteer families. She looked at him directly, including the Martinez children whose guardian specifically requested you. Marcus stopped working and stared at her. Me? I'm not exactly parental material. The children's guardian is Sarah Kim, your former chief engineer. She remembers your kindness during the voyage aboard Haven's Rest and believes you would be an excellent mentor for children who have lost their homes. The idea terrified and intrigued Marcus in equal measure. He'd spent so long focused on machinery and repairs that the thought of being responsible for young minds seemed overwhelming. But then he remembered David's words about teachers being warriors in their own way. I'll think about it, he said finally. A commotion near the docking bay drew their attention. A new ship was approaching, sleek, graceful, and bearing the markings of the Valdrani Imperial Fleet. It was much larger than the usual diplomatic vessels, suggesting someone of significant importance was aboard. Were you expecting official visitors? Marcus asked. Zarathul's expression grew suddenly formal. The 3rd Battle Fleet is conducting exercises in this sector. It is possible that Fleet Commander Varikshaw wishes to inspect our joint operations. Your commander has a name that sounds like yours. Family? My mother, Zarathul said quietly. This complicates matters. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Family issues? Fleet Commander Varikshaw disapproves of my assignment to this alliance. She considers close cooperation with humans to be beneath Valdrani dignity. The ship completed its docking procedure with military precision. Marcus watched through the hangar's observation windows as armored figures disembarked. Valdrani warriors whose equipment made Zarathul's enhanced armor look humble by comparison. At their head strode a figure that could only be the fleet commander, taller than Zarathul, with armor that seemed to drink light itself, and bearing an aura of absolute authority. Should I make myself scarce? Marcus asked. No. If she wishes to understand this alliance, she must meet its architects. Zarathul straightened, her armor systems automatically adjusting to formal presentation mode. Besides, hiding would only confirm her prejudices about human reliability. The delegation approached across the hangar floor, their movements synchronized with military precision. Fleet Commander Varikshaw moved with the same fluid grace as her daughter. But where Zarathul had learned to moderate her presence among humans, the fleet commander radiated imperial authority that made nearby civilians unconsciously step aside. She stopped directly in front of Marcus and Zarathul, her golden eyes, so similar to her daughter's, studying them with calculating intensity. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of command across star systems. So, you are the human who corrupted my daughter's armor with primitive technology. Marcus met her gaze steadily. I'm the human who kept your daughter alive when her armor was damaged beyond her ability to repair by contaminating Valdrani military technology with inferior components. By using whatever worked, Marcus gestured toward the bustling hangar around them. Your daughter's alive, this alliance exists, and the Kethvar are being pushed back on 6 fronts. I'd say the results speak for themselves. Fleet Commander Varric Shaw's expression didn't change, but Marcus caught a flicker of something, surprise, perhaps, or approval in those penetrating eyes. You do not show proper deference to superior authority. I show respect to people who've earned it, Marcus replied. Your daughter earned mine by trusting me with her life. You'll have to earn yours the same way. The tension in the hangar was thick enough to cut with a plasma torch. Zarathul stepped slightly forward, ready to intervene if necessary, while the fleet commander's escort shifted almost imperceptibly toward combat readiness. Then Varric Shaw did something unexpected. She laughed. It was a sound like controlled thunder, dangerous but not hostile. I begin to understand how this alliance came to exist, she said, studying Marcus with new interest. My daughter described humans as resourceful beyond logic and stubborn beyond reason. I see now that she understated the case. Is that a compliment or an insult? Marcus asked. Among Valdrani, there is little difference between the two. The fleet commander turned to her daughter. Show me this integrated technology you have developed. I would see for myself how human ingenuity has enhanced our capabilities. Over the next several hours, Marcus found himself giving an impromptu tour of the joint research facilities to one of the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy. Fleet Commander Varric Shaw asked pointed questions about everything from power coupling systems to strategic defensive installations, her keen intellect probing for weaknesses and advantages with equal intensity. This shield generator modification, she said, studying a technical readout. It increases efficiency by 37% while reducing power consumption. How? Human engineering tends to focus on getting maximum performance from minimum resources, Marcus explained. We've had to. We're usually working with whatever we can scavenge or improvise. Your people's technology is incredibly advanced, but it's designed for abundance. When you combine the two approaches, you create solutions neither could achieve alone, Varric Shaw finished. Fascinating. They concluded the tour in Marcus's workshop, where he demonstrated the armor integration process that had saved Zarathul's life. The fleet commander watched with growing interest as he showed how human components could interface with Valdrani bio-neural systems. And this causes no degradation of combat effectiveness? She asked. In some cases, it actually improves performance, Zarathul interjected. The quantum batteries provide more stable power output than standard plasma cells. And the crystalline matrices offer superior processing capabilities. Varric Shaw studied her daughter's armor, noting the subtle differences where human technology had been integrated. Remove your gauntlet, she commanded. Zarathul complied, revealing the bio-neural interface ports where human components had been grafted into the Valdrani system. But instead of the corrupted appearance Varric Shaw might have expected, the integration was seamless, alien technologies flowing together as if they had been designed as one. Remarkable, the fleet commander murmured, then looked directly at Marcus. You accomplished this integration without formal training in Valdrani biotechnology? I had a good teacher, Marcus replied, nodding toward Zarathul. And I've learned that technology at its core is about solving problems. The principles are universal even if the implementation varies. Fleet Commander Varric Shaw was quiet for several long moments, processing what she had seen. Finally, she spoke with the weight of official decision behind her words. The Imperial Fleet will provide full material support for this alliance. My daughter will remain as military liaison, with authority to coordinate joint operations against Kethvar forces. She paused, studying Marcus with those penetrating golden eyes. And you, human engineer, will be granted access to Imperial technical databases. Perhaps our people can learn something from your resourcefulness. As the delegation prepared to depart, Varric Shaw approached Marcus one final time. My daughter tells me you lost a brother in this war. Yes, ma'am. Warriors understand the price of protecting others. Your brother died as any Valdrani would be honored to die, defending those who could not defend themselves. She extended. The reactor chamber filled with blinding light as quantum containment fields collapsed in sequence. Marcus felt the vibrations through the deck plating as ancient systems overloaded in a carefully orchestrated cascade. Beside him, Zarathul maintained her grip on his hand, her armor's integrated systems calculating their remaining time with mechanical precision. 30 seconds until critical failure, she announced calmly. Through the reactor chamber's viewports, they could see the Keithvar destroyers desperately trying to escape the expanding energy field. The lead ship's engines flared as it attempted to reach minimum safe distance. But Marcus's calculations had been precise. They were too close, moving too slowly. Look. Zarathul pointed toward the edge of the debris field with her free hand. The Haven's Rest appeared as a distant speck, her damaged engines pushing her beyond the blast radius with seconds to spare. Emergency lights flickered along her hull where Keithvar plasma had found their mark. But she was whole, carrying 3,000 refugees toward safety. 20 seconds, Marcus said, watching energy readings climb beyond all rational limits. The ancient dreadnought groaned around them as quantum forces began tearing at its molecular structure. But instead of fear, Marcus felt a strange sense of completion. For months he'd been running from one crisis to another, always reactive, always one step behind. Here, finally, he'd taken control of the situation. Marcus, Zarathul's voice was urgent. My armor's sensors detect an escape pod bay near our position. If we move now, Marcus shook his head. The cascade's too far along. Any pod we launched would be caught in the explosion. Then we require a different solution. Zarathul suddenly released his hand and moved to her suit's equipment pack. My armor includes an emergency stasis field generator. Short range, designed for battlefield trauma. Stasis won't protect us from a reactor explosion. No, but it might preserve us long enough for rescue. She pulled out a device the size of a human fist, its crystalline surface already beginning to glow. The field can sustain 2 people for approximately 6 hours. Marcus stared at the device. That's assuming anyone comes looking for us in a radioactive debris field. Captain Rodriguez knows we remained aboard. And humans, I have learned, do not abandon their own. 10 seconds, Marcus announced, then looked at her directly. Will it work? I do not know. But it offers possibility where none existed before. The reactor's cascade reached the final trigger point. Marcus grabbed Zarathul's hand again and nodded. Do it. She activated the stasis field just as the ancient dreadnought died in fire for the second time in its existence. The last thing Marcus saw was Zarathul's golden eyes watching him with unwavering determination as energy fields beyond comprehension consumed everything around them. Darkness, silence, the sensation of floating in warm water. While time stretched like taffy, Marcus was dimly aware of his own existence but couldn't feel his body, couldn't move, couldn't even be certain he was breathing. The stasis field held him in perfect suspension between life and death. Somewhere in the infinite moment he felt Zarathul's presence beside him, not physical contact, but something deeper. Their minds seemed to drift together in the artificial timelessness, sharing memories and emotions without words. He saw glimpses of her past, a young Valdrani warrior training in crystalline academies, learning that strength meant protection, not domination. Her first battle, the terror and exhilaration of combat, the gradual realization that the Empire's enemies were often defending their homes just as fiercely as she defended hers. In return, she experienced his memories, David teaching children about the stars, Marcus fixing broken machines with infinite patience. The day the Keithvar came and everything changed. She felt his guilt over the people he couldn't save, his determination to keep fixing things no matter how hopeless the situation seemed. Time flowed around them like a river, carrying away hours they couldn't count. But gradually, Marcus became aware of something new. Vibrations through the stasis field. Mechanical sounds that suggested rescue rather than natural phenomena. The field fluctuated, and consciousness returned like a tide washing over a beach. Marcus gasped, his lungs burning as he drew his first breath in hours. Beside him, Zarathul was also stirring, her armor's life support systems automatically adjusting to their changed situation. They were in a darkened chamber surrounded by twisted metal and floating debris. Emergency lights cast everything in harsh white relief, and Marcus could hear the hum of life support systems working to maintain atmosphere in their small pocket of survival. Status report, came a familiar voice through their helmet comms. Marcus looked up to see Captain Rodriguez floating nearby in a salvage suit, his face visible through the helmet visor. Behind him, 2 crew members were setting up temporary life support equipment. Captain? Marcus's voice was hoarse. How long? 8 hours since the explosion. We've been searching the debris field since it cooled enough for approach. Rodriguez moved closer, his expression mixing relief with exasperation. You magnificent, insane fool. When that reactor went up, it took out all 4 HFY destroyers and half the ancient battlefield. Marcus tried to sit up, his body sluggish after hours in stasis. The ship? The refugees? Safe. Haven's Rest is holding position at the edge of the field. Rodriguez extended a hand to help him up. Though we're going to need extensive repairs before we can continue to the neutral zone. Zarathul was already on her feet, her armor's servos compensating for the lingering effects of stasis. The HFY fleet? Destroyed. The chain reaction you triggered took out 15 ancient wrecks and created an expanding debris field that'll be a navigation hazard for decades. Rodriguez shook his head in amazement. Intelligence estimates we eliminated about 12% of their local fleet strength. Marcus finally managed to stand, though he had to lean against a bulkhead for support. Around them, the remnants of the ancient reactor chamber told the story of their survival. The stasis field had created a small pocket of protected space, while quantum fire consumed everything else. How did you find us? He asked. Zarathul's armor beacon survived the explosion. Took us 6 hours to dig through enough debris to reach you. Rodriguez handed Marcus a portable oxygen unit, though I have to ask, how did you know that stasis field would work? Marcus looked at Zarathul, who was running diagnostics on her armor systems. I didn't. But sometimes you have to trust in solutions you can't fully understand. Like trusting humans with impossible repairs? Zarathul asked, a note of amusement in her voice. Exactly like that. Rodriguez cleared his throat. Well, now that you're both alive and relatively intact, we need to get back to the ship. Turns out your little demonstration caught some attention. What kind of attention? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. The kind that comes with official fleet designations and diplomatic credentials. Seems the Valdrani Empire is very interested in meeting the humans who saved one of their warriors and destroyed a significant HFY force. Rodriguez smiled. Congratulations, Marcus. I think you just helped start the first human Valdrani alliance in recorded history. As they prepared to leave the ruined reactor chamber, Marcus caught Zarathul's arm. Earlier in the stasis field, I felt, did we really share memories? She nodded, her golden eyes serious. The field creates quantum entanglement between nearby consciousness. It is not unheard of between close allies. Allies, Marcus repeated, testing the word. Among other things, she said softly, then activated her helmet and moved toward the rescue team. Marcus watched her go, then looked around the chamber one final time. He'd come here to die protecting others, but instead found something he hadn't been looking for. Proof that understanding could bridge any gap. That trust could create alliances where none had existed before. As he followed the rescue team back toward the Haven's Rest, Marcus Chen couldn't help but smile. After all, he was in the business of fixing things, and it seemed like he'd just helped fix the relationship between 2 species who desperately needed each other to survive. The ancient dreadnought loomed before them like a metal mountain, its hull pitted and scarred by thousands of years adrift in space. Marcus and Zarathul used their suit thrusters to navigate between floating debris, racing against time as the HFY destroyers closed in behind them. There, Marcus pointed toward a gaping wound in the dreadnought's hull. Looks like weapons fire punched through to the reactor section. We can enter there. Zarathul's response crackled through the comm. The damage patterns are consistent with Valdrani plasma cannons. This vessel fought my ancestors. They dove through the breach into the ship's interior, their helmet lights cutting through absolute darkness. The corridors were massive, built for beings much larger than either humans or Valdrani. Emergency bulkheads had sealed automatically when the ship died, preserving atmosphere in some sections despite the millennia that had passed. Reading residual power signatures deeper in the ship, Marcus reported, consulting his scanner. The reactor's still there, and it's not completely dead. They kicked off walls and pulled themselves along guide rails, moving through the ancient vessel with increasing urgency. Behind them, The Haven's Rest was playing a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the wreckage, using the massive debris to block Kethvar targeting systems. "Marcus Chen," Zarathul said as they reached an intersection of corridors. "I must ask, why do you sacrifice yourself for others? You could have remained aboard your ship." Marcus paused, considering the question as he checked his scanner for the reactor's location. "My brother asked me something similar once. After our parents died in a mining accident, I wanted to leave New Terra, find somewhere safer. But David said home isn't a place you run to. It's the place you choose to defend." They continued deeper into the ship, their lights revealing strange symbols and decorations along the walls. Whatever species had built this dreadnought, they had been artists as well as warriors. "Your brother was wise," Zarathul observed. "Among my people, we have a saying, 'The warrior who fights only for victory dies empty. The warrior who fights for others lives forever.'" "I like that," Marcus said, then stopped suddenly. "Here, this is it." Before them stretched the reactor chamber, a vast space dominated by crystalline structures that still pulsed with faint energy. The technology was alien but not incomprehensible. Fusion containment fields maintained by quantum matrices, all powered by zero-point energy taps that had somehow remained stable for millennia. "Magnificent," Zarathul breathed. "Even after all this time, it maintains basic functions." Marcus was already moving toward the central control node, his scanner revealing the reactor's status. "It's running on pure momentum at this point, but there's still massive potential energy locked in these crystals. If I can destabilize the containment field." An explosion in the distance shook the ancient ship. Through the hull breach, they could see plasma fire as the Kethvar destroyers engaged the Haven's Rest among the debris. "They've found them," Zarathul said grimly. Marcus worked frantically at the control node, his engineering knowledge bridging the gap between human technology and ancient alien systems. The principles were universal: energy, containment, controlled release. But the scale was staggering. "How long until cascade?" Zarathul asked, watching his work. 3 minutes once I trigger it. Maybe 4 if we're lucky." Marcus found the primary containment control and began the delicate process of introducing instability into the quantum matrix. "The explosion will take out everything within 10 kilometers. Chain reaction might get the other wrecks too. And our ship? If Rodriguez follows orders and runs the moment I trigger this, they'll just barely make it out." Marcus paused in his work. "You could still go back. Your armor's fast enough to reach them before the cascade. As are you if we both leave now." Marcus shook his head. "Someone needs to make sure this works. If the Kethvar detect the instability and destroy the reactor before it cascades, all those people die for nothing." Zarathul moved closer, her golden eyes visible through her helmet visor. "Then we both ensure it works. You don't have to do this. You've got no stake in a ship full of human refugees. I have a stake in you, Marcus Chen." She placed one of her 4 hands on his shoulder, the gesture somehow conveying warmth despite the armored suits between them. "You repaired more than my armor. You showed me that honor exists beyond the boundaries of species and empire." Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen. He'd been carrying the weight of too many losses, too many people he couldn't save. But here in the heart of an ancient warship, he wasn't alone. "Almost got it," he said, making the final adjustments to the containment field. 30 seconds until I trigger the cascade." Through the reactor chamber's massive viewports, they watched the battle raging outside. The Haven's Rest was taking hits, her shields flickering under Kethvar fire, but she was still fighting, still protecting the thousands of refugees aboard. "Your people never give up," Zarathul observed. "We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten," Marcus replied, his hand hovering over the final control. "Ready?" "Ready." Marcus triggered the cascade. Deep within the crystalline matrices, quantum fields began to destabilize. The ancient reactor, dormant for millennia, stirred to catastrophic life. "It's working," Marcus reported, watching energy readings climb exponentially. 3 minutes until total collapse. Alarms suddenly blared through the dreadnought's corridors. Emergency systems that had waited thousands of years finally activated. Warning lights bathed the reactor chamber in pulsing red as the cascade built toward critical mass. "The Kethvar have detected the energy buildup," Zarathul reported, monitoring communications. "They're breaking off their attack." "Too late for them," Marcus said with grim satisfaction. "Even if they destroy this ship now, the cascade can't be stopped." They stood together in the growing energy storm, watching through the viewports as the Haven's Rest limped away from the ancient battlefield. The old transport was wounded but intact, carrying her precious cargo toward safety. 2 minutes, Marcus announced. Zarathul moved closer, and to Marcus's surprise, she reached up and removed her helmet. Her alien features were sharp and elegant, with silver markings that seemed to shift in the reactor's pulsing light. "I want to see this moment clearly," she explained, then reached for Marcus's helmet seals. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. The reactor chamber still held atmosphere, and if they were going to die here, he wanted to face it as himself, not hidden behind a visor. As his helmet came off, Zarathul studied his face with those penetrating golden eyes. "You have scars," she observed, touching a faint mark along his jawline. "Shrapnel. From New Terra. You've got some too." He indicated similar marks on her neck and shoulder, wounds that spoke of battles fought and survived. "Yes," she said softly. "You've known battle too." Around them, the ancient reactor began its final dance toward destruction, but for a moment Marcus felt peace. He'd spent so long focused on fixing things, on keeping others safe, that he'd forgotten what it felt like to be understood by someone who'd walked a similar path. 1 minute, he said, but his voice was calm now. Zarathul reached out with her primary hand and took his. Her skin was warm, with a slightly different texture than human flesh. But the gesture was universally comforting. "For what it's worth," Marcus said, "I'm glad I fixed your armor." "And I am glad you did not simply fix it, but made it better," she replied, "as you have made me better." The cascade reached critical mass, and ancient fire began to wake in the heart of a dead ship. The Haven's Rest shuddered as the first Kethvar plasma torpedoes streaked toward them. Marcus watched the tactical display from engineering, his hand poised over the resonance cascade trigger. Timing would be everything. "Torpedoes incoming." Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "Zarathul, you're sure about this?" "Trust in human ingenuity, Captain," came the Valdrani warrior's calm reply. "Marcus Chen, prepare for my mark." The torpedoes appeared as bright dots on the display, their plasma warheads capable of vaporizing the transport in seconds. But Marcus had learned to read Kethvar attack patterns during months of running and hiding. Their weapons relied on quantum tracking systems that locked onto shield frequencies. "Now, Marcus," Zarathul commanded. Marcus slammed his palm down on the activation switch. The Haven's Rest groaned as every spare joule of power surged through the modified shield generators. The cascade effect rippled outward like a stone thrown in still water, distorting space itself around the refugee ship. The Kethvar torpedoes, suddenly deprived of their target lock, began spiraling wildly off course. 2 exploded harmlessly against asteroids while the others simply burned out their fuel, searching for a target that no longer registered on their sensors. "Direct hit on their formation," the weapons officer shouted. "The lead destroyer's navigation is down. They're drifting." Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction, but it was short-lived. Warning alarms screamed through engineering as the cascade effect burned out 3 shield generators and overloaded the main power coupling. Emergency lighting bathed everything in hellish red. "Shield generators offline," Sarah Kim reported. "We're down to emergency power." "Expected," Marcus called back, already moving to implement damage control. "Emergency teams to sections 4 and 7. We've got plasma leaks." On the bridge, Captain Rodriguez was shouting orders. "Come about bearing 27 Mark IV. Take us into the asteroid field." The Haven's Rest lurched as her engines fired, diving toward the rocky maze that had concealed the Kethvar ambush. Without shields and with limited power, their only hope was to use the asteroids as cover while Marcus worked his mechanical magic once again. 3 destroyers still operational and pursuing, the navigation officer reported. "They'll have weapons lock in 4 minutes. Marcus was already knee-deep in emergency repairs, his team working with practiced efficiency born of desperation. The cascade had done more damage than he'd hoped, but the ship's essential systems were intact. They just needed time. "Marcus, I need at least minimal shields," Rodriguez called over the comm. "Anything you can give me." "Working on it, Captain," Marcus replied, sweat streaming down his face as he rerouted power from non-essential systems. The artificial gravity failed completely, sending loose tools floating through the engineering section. His team adapted instantly, using magnetic boots and tether lines to continue their work in 0G. The ship shook violently as plasma bolts from the pursuing destroyers struck the asteroid they were hiding behind. Rock fragments peppered the hull, but the ancient transport held together. "They're trying to flush us out." Rodriguez's voice was tight with tension. "Zarathul, any more tactical brilliance?" "The Kethvar are persistent but predictable," the Valdrani warrior replied. "They will attempt to drive us into open space where they can use superior firepower. We must deny them this advantage." Marcus managed to restore minimal shields just as another plasma barrage shook their rocky hiding place. The asteroid was slowly being chewed apart by Kethvar weapons, and soon there would be nothing left to hide behind. "I've got an idea," Marcus announced over the comm. "Captain, can you get us to that big asteroid cluster at bearing 315? The one that looks like a graveyard? Why?" "Because that's exactly what it is." Marcus was already pulling up geological scans on his tablet. "Those aren't natural asteroids. They're the remains of an ancient battle. I'm reading massive metal deposits, probably from destroyed warships." Zarathul's voice cut in, suddenly sharp with interest. "How ancient?" "Couple thousand years, maybe more. But here's the thing. If those wrecks still have their power cores intact, even depleted ones, I might be able to trigger a chain reaction." The bridge fell silent except for the sound of plasma bolts striking their diminishing cover. Finally, Rodriguez spoke. "That sounds like a good way to blow ourselves up along with them. Not if we time it right. Those old cores will take several minutes to cascade once triggered. We set it off, then run like hell while the Kethvar are investigating. And if you're wrong about the timing," Marcus grinned despite their desperate situation, "then we'll never know we were wrong." Another violent shake told them their asteroid cover was almost gone. Captain Rodriguez made his decision. "Plot a course for the graveyard. All hands, prepare for emergency acceleration." The Haven's Rest burst from behind the disintegrating asteroid like a startled rabbit, engines straining to reach the ancient battlefield. The Kethvar destroyers immediately gave chase, their superior speed allowing them to close the distance rapidly. Entering the wreck field, the navigation officer reported, "Massive debris field ahead. This is going to be tight flying." Marcus watched through the engineering section's viewports as they plunged into a maze of ancient metal. Twisted hull fragments the size of city blocks drifted in the darkness, some still recognizable as parts of long-dead warships. The Haven's Rest wove between them like a minnow swimming through a coral reef. "Scanning for power signatures," Marcus announced, his modified sensors probing the ancient wrecks. "There, bearing 090. Massive dreadnought, looks like her reactor compartment is still intact." "The Kethvar are matching our course," Rodriguez reported. "They're being more cautious in the debris field, but they'll be in weapons range in 2 minutes." Marcus was already suiting up for EVA. "I need to get aboard that wreck and manually trigger the cascade." "Sarah, you have engineering." "Marcus, that's suicide," Sarah protested. "You'll never make it back in time." "Don't plan to come back," Marcus said, checking his suit seals. "Once I trigger the cascade, you run. Get these people to safety." Zarathul's voice came through the comm with surprising urgency. "Marcus Chen, delay your EVA. I will accompany you." "This isn't your fight," Marcus replied, heading for the airlock. "You are incorrect. When you repaired my armor, you made it my fight. Valdrani do not abandon their debts of honor." Marcus paused at the airlock door. Through the viewport, he could see the ancient dreadnought growing larger as they approached. Its hull was scarred by millennia of micrometeorite impacts, but it was still massive, a weapon of war from a forgotten age. "Your choice," he said finally. "But we're not coming back, I understand. Perhaps it is fitting that a teacher's brother and a warrior should face this together." As Marcus cycled the airlock, he found himself thinking of David again. His brother had faced impossible odds to protect others, and now Marcus was doing the same. Maybe that's what humans did. They stood between danger and the innocent, regardless of the cost. The airlock opened, and Marcus Chen stepped into the void, a Valdrani warrior beside him, heading toward an ancient ship that would either save 3,000 refugees or kill them all. 3 days later, Marcus was elbow-deep in the ship's main power coupling when the general alarm started wailing. Red emergency lights bathed the engineering section as he scrambled to secure his tools and rushed toward the bridge. The corridors filled with crew members and civilians moving with practiced efficiency. After months of running from Kethvar raids, everyone aboard the Haven's Rest knew their emergency positions. Marcus squeezed past families heading to the armored sections deeper in the ship and climbed the access ladder to the bridge. Captain Rodriguez stood at the tactical display, his face grim. 4 HFY destroyers closing fast from the asteroid field. They've been lying in wait. Marcus joined the cluster of senior crew around the display. The enemy ships appeared as red dots moving in perfect formation toward their position. The Haven's Rest was a sitting duck, an old transport with minimal shields and even less armament. Time to intercept? Rodriguez asked. 18 minutes at current velocity, the navigation officer reported. We can't outrun them, Captain. Best we can do is get the civilians to escape pods before they're in weapons range. Belay that order. Zarathul's voice cut through the bridge chatter as she emerged from the lift. Her armor gleamed under the emergency lighting. The repaired sections now fully integrated and functioning. 4 destroyers is not insurmountable odds. The bridge crew turned to stare at her. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. That's noble thinking, but you're 1 warrior against 4 warships. Not 1 warrior. Zarathul moved to the tactical display, studying the enemy formation with a professional eye. 1 warrior with intimate knowledge of HFY tactics, aboard a ship full of resourceful humans. She looked directly at Marcus. Your species excels at improvisation under pressure, does it not? Marcus felt his pulse quicken. What did you have in mind? The HFY expect their prey to run or surrender. They do not expect effective resistance from a refugee transport. Zarathul traced the enemy approach vector on the display. This gives us 1 advantage. Surprise. Surprise won't stop plasma torpedoes, the weapons officer interjected. No, but proper tactics might deflect them. Zarathul turned to Rodriguez. Captain, do you trust your crew to execute complex maneuvers under fire? Rodriguez looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of officers who had kept them alive through a dozen close encounters. They've done it before. Excellent. Marcus Chen, I require your technical expertise. Can this vessel's shields be reconfigured to create a resonance cascade? Marcus blinked. Theoretically, yes, but it would require rerouting power from life support and artificial gravity, and even then it would only work once before burning out the generators. Once may be sufficient. Zarathul's eyes gleamed with tactical calculation. A resonance cascade at precisely the right moment could disrupt their torpedo guidance systems and scatter their formation. That's insane, the chief engineer protested. The power surge could fry half our systems. Better than being destroyed outright, Rodriguez said grimly. How long do you need, Marcus? Marcus was already running calculations in his head. 20 minutes to reconfigure the shield generators. But that's cutting it close. The HFY will be in weapons range in 18 minutes, Zarathul noted. This will require precise timing. Rodriguez looked around the bridge 1 more time. Options are limited, people. Either we try this crazy plan or we abandon ship. Show of hands, who's voting to fight? Every hand on the bridge went up without hesitation. Rodriguez nodded. Marcus, get to engineering. Zarathul, you're our tactical advisor. Everyone else, battle stations. Marcus sprinted through the corridors, his mind racing through the modifications needed. The Haven's Rest was an old ship, but her bones were solid. He'd spent months learning every circuit and conduit, every redundancy and backup system. If anyone could pull off this modification, it was him. The engineering section was already buzzing with activity. Marcus barked orders to his team, sending them scrambling to reroute power conduits and recalibrate shield generators. The work was dangerous. Live plasma flowing through systems never designed to handle such loads. Marcus, Chief Engineer Sarah Kim called out from the main console. Power coupling 7 is overheating. Emergency coolant section 3, Marcus replied, not looking up from the delicate work of rewiring the shield matrix. And kill artificial gravity on decks 5 through 7. We need every spare joule for this. The ship shuddered as the modifications took effect. Emergency lighting flickered as power flowed through new pathways. Marcus could feel the Haven's Rest straining under the stress but holding together through sheer stubborn determination. 15 minutes to contact, came Rodriguez's voice over the comm. How are we doing down there? Almost ready, Marcus called back, sweat beading on his forehead as he made the final connections. But Captain, when we trigger this cascade, we'll have maybe 30 seconds before the whole system overloads. 1 shot, then we're back to running. Understood. Stand by. Marcus wiped his hands and looked around the engineering section. His team stood ready at emergency stations. prepared to execute damage control the moment the cascade triggered. These were good people, refugees who had become crew through necessity and determination. The ship's intercom crackled. "All hands, this is the captain. In 10 minutes, we're going to do something that's either brilliant or suicidal. Maybe both. But we're not going to run anymore. Today, we show the Kethvar what humans are capable of when we're backed into a corner." A cheer echoed through the ship's corridors, audible even over the humming of stressed systems. Marcus smiled grimly and keyed his comm. "Engineering ready, Captain. Give us the word and we'll light up the sky." "Copy that, Marcus. Bridge out." Marcus looked at the modified shield generators now pulsing with barely contained energy. In his mind, he could see David standing in that classroom on New Terra, rifle in hand, protecting children who counted on him. Every refugee on this ship was someone's David now. Ordinary people choosing to fight. Impossible odds rather than surrender. "Kethvar. Destroyers in weapons range in 5 minutes," the intercom announced. Marcus took a deep breath and placed his hand on the activation switch. "Come on then," he whispered. "Let's see what happens when humans stop running." Marcus kept his word, focusing intently on the exposed armor components while Zarathul stood with her back to him. Without the outer plates, he could see the intricate network of bio-neural conduits that made the armor more than just protection. It was almost a second nervous system. "This is incredible," he murmured, running his scanner over the crystalline power matrix. "The way the bio-neural fibers integrate with the power distribution. It's like the armor learns from its wearer." "It does." Zarathul's voice was quieter now, less formal. "Each suit bonds with its warrior over years of combat. It learns to anticipate, to react, to protect based on the wearer's instincts and experiences." Marcus nodded, carefully disconnecting a damaged conduit. "So when I repair this, I'm not just fixing machinery. I'm healing part of your extended nervous system. Few outsiders understand this concept." There was genuine surprise in her tone. Even fewer would care. "Understanding helps me do better work." Marcus selected a quantum battery from his collection, studying its output specifications. "Tell me about the last battle. How did the damage occur?" Zarathul was silent for several moments. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of recent loss. "Kethvar ambush. 3 of their heavy cruisers dropped out of hyperspace without warning. My squadron was escorting a civilian convoy, mostly refugees from the contested worlds." Marcus carefully began grafting the quantum battery into the armor's power matrix, using bioconductive gel to bridge the technological gap between human and Valdrani engineering. "Sounds familiar. We've been running from Kethvar raids for months. The convoy escaped, but it cost. My wingmates." Zarathul's voice trailed off. "I was the only survivor when your ship found me." The quantum battery flickered to life, sending pulses of energy through the damaged conduits. Marcus smiled slightly. The integration was working, though it would need fine-tuning. "I'm sorry about your squadron. Losing people you fought alongside. It leaves scars that don't show on any scanner." "You speak as one who knows such loss." Marcus paused in his work, memories surfacing unbidden. "New Terra colony. I was running my repair shop when the Kethvar came. Managed to get a lot of civilians to the evacuation ships, but..." He shook his head. "Some fights you can't win no matter how hard you try." He felt Zarathul turn slightly, though she maintained her position. "You fought?" "Not like you. I'm no warrior. But when things got desperate, everyone who could hold a plasma rifle tried to buy time for the evacuation." Marcus resumed his work, installing a crystalline matrix salvaged from a Centauri freighter. "Lost a lot of good people that day, including my brother." The armor hummed as another system came online. Marcus had to admire the engineering. Even with makeshift components, the Valdrani technology was adapting, incorporating the alien parts into its bio-neural network. "Your brother was a warrior?" Zarathul asked. "David was a teacher, but when the Kethvar broke through the outer defenses, he stayed behind to help evacuate the school, made sure every kid got to the ships." Marcus's hands worked steadily, muscle memory taking over while his mind wandered through painful territory. Found him afterward. He'd held a classroom against 3 Kethvar soldiers with nothing but a hunting rifle. A teacher warrior. "This is not uncommon among my people. Those who shape young minds must also be willing to defend them." Marcus smiled sadly. David would have liked that perspective. He always said teaching was its own kind of battle, fighting ignorance and fear with knowledge and hope. The armor's bio-neural network suddenly surged to life, causing both of them to step back as energy coursed through the repaired conduits. The damaged plates began to shift and realign themselves, guided by the system's self-repair protocols. Remarkable, Zarathul breathed. You have created harmony between incompatible technologies. How? Sometimes the best solutions aren't elegant or pure, Marcus explained, watching the armor's system stabilize. You work with what you have and bridge the gaps with ingenuity. The quantum battery provides stable power. The biogel translates signals between your neural interface and our electronics. And the crystalline matrix regulates everything. He turned away as Zarathul began reattaching the armor plates. The process was mesmerizing. The bio-neural fibers reached out to embrace each component, integrating it seamlessly into the whole. Within minutes, she was fully armored again, though the repaired section showed slight color variations where human technology had been incorporated. The integration is stable, she reported, running diagnostics through her Neuralink. Power levels at 87% of optimal. Combat effectiveness restored. Not bad for spare parts and educated guesswork, Marcus said with satisfaction. Though you'll want to get proper Valdrani components when you can. This is temporary field repair. Zarathul turned to face him fully, and Marcus saw something different in those golden eyes. The wariness was still there, but tempered with what might have been respect. You have given me more than repair. Marcus Chen, you have returned my ability to protect others. Just doing what I do best. Marcus began cleaning his tools, uncomfortable with the intensity of her gaze. Besides, sounds like we're all fighting the same enemy. Makes sense to help each other. Indeed. Zarathul moved closer, and Marcus noticed she walked differently now. The armor responded more fluidly to her movements, the integration complete. I find myself curious about human combat doctrine. Your brother's last stand, this willingness to sacrifice for others, is this common among your species? Marcus considered the question while packing away his equipment. Common enough. We've got our share of cowards and heroes like any species probably, but when things get desperate, when it's about protecting what matters, humans tend to dig in and fight, even without formal military training, especially without it sometimes. Desperate people with nothing left to lose can be surprisingly resourceful. Marcus gestured around the cargo bay workshop. This whole ship is proof of that. Refugees and civilians who decided they weren't going to just lie down and die. Zarathul studied the makeshift workshop with new eyes, taking in the ingenious modifications and jury-rigged systems that kept the old transport running. Your species transforms necessity into innovation. We make do with what we have. Always have. Marcus sealed the tool case and looked at her directly. Question is, what happens now? Your armor's fixed, but your ship is scrap. You planning to stay with us refugees, or do you have somewhere else to be? The Valdrani warrior was quiet for a long moment, her hand unconsciously moving to touch one of the repaired sections of her armor. My mission was to gather intelligence on Kethvar fleet movements. That mission remains incomplete. Plenty of Kethvar out there to gather intelligence on, Marcus pointed out. This ship's heading for the neutral zone, probably run into more than we want to see. Perhaps, Zarathul said thoughtfully, and perhaps a ship of human refugees requires additional protection for such a journey. Marcus smiled for the first time since the repair began. I think Captain Rodriguez would be very interested in that conversation. Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands as the transport ship's engines rumbled beneath his feet. The refugee vessel Haven's Rest wasn't much to look at, but it was home to 3,000 humans fleeing the devastation of the Outer Rim colonies. As the ship's chief mechanic, Marcus spent his days keeping the ancient systems running with spare parts and prayers. The cargo bay doubled as his workshop, filled with salvaged equipment from a dozen different worlds. Marcus had always been good with his hands, able to fix things others had given up on. Back on New Terra before the Kethvar invasion, he'd run a small repair shop. Now he fixed whatever needed fixing to keep everyone alive. The bay doors hissed open and Captain Rodriguez entered with someone Marcus had never seen before. The figure was tall, nearly 7 feet, with 4 arms and skin that shifted between deep purple and silver depending on the light. Her movements were fluid yet predatory, like a dancer who could kill you between steps. Most striking were her eyes, pale gold with vertical pupils that seemed to see everything at once. Marcus, "This is Zarathul of the Valdrani Empire," Captain Rodriguez said, his voice carefully neutral. "Her ship was damaged in an engagement with Kethavar raiders. We pulled her from the wreckage." The alien warrior stood silently, studying Marcus with those unsettling eyes. Her armor was a masterwork of alien engineering, flowing plates that seemed to grow from her body rather than being worn over it. But even Marcus could see the damage. Scorch marks ran along the left side, and several plates hung at odd angles. Sparks occasionally flickered from damaged power conduits. "She needs repairs," the captain continued. "Her people and ours aren't exactly allies, but she helped us fight off the Kethavar. 3 of their warships were closing in when she appeared." Marcus nodded slowly. Politics weren't his concern. Broken things were. "What kind of power source does it use?" Zarathul spoke for the first time, her voice like controlled thunder. "Plasma cells integrated with bioneural networks. Your primitive tools cannot comprehend such technology." The dismissive tone sparked something in Marcus, but he kept his expression calm. He'd heard similar words from Federation engineers who'd looked down on his colonial education. Maybe. But broken is broken, no matter how advanced the technology. "Mind if I take a look?" The Valdrani warrior's secondary arms crossed while her primary pair rested on what might have been weapon hilts. "You may examine, human, but do not dare attempt repair without understanding." Marcus approached slowly, the way he might approach a wounded animal. Up close, the armor was even more impressive. The metal, if it was metal, seemed alive, with veins of energy pulsing beneath the surface. The damage was extensive but not fatal to the system. Whoever had built this understood redundancy. He pulled out his scanner, a modified device he'd cobbled together from a dozen different sources. The readings made him whistle softly. The energy patterns were unlike anything in human technology, but the underlying principles weren't entirely foreign. It reminded him of the quantum resonance systems he'd studied in technical college. "Interesting," he murmured, running his fingers along an undamaged section. The armor was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. "You claim to understand?" Zarathul's tone carried skepticism and something that might have been curiosity. "Not understand," Marcus admitted, "but I can see the pattern. Energy flows here through these channels. When it's damaged, the flow redirects through backup pathways. But those are overloading because the primary distribution node is fried." One of Zarathul's 4 hands moved slightly. Surprise, perhaps. "Continue." Marcus pointed to a cluster of crystalline components near her shoulder. "This looks like it regulates power distribution. The crystals are cracked, causing fluctuations that stress the entire system. If I could replace them with compatible components—" "There are no compatible components on this vessel," Zarathul stated flatly. Marcus smiled. The expression he got when presented with an impossible problem. "Maybe not exact replacements, but I might be able to jury-rig something that works temporarily." He gestured to his workshop. "I've got quantum batteries from Federation ships, crystalline matrices from Centauri freighters, even some bioconductive gel from a Harmony medical unit." The alien warrior studied him for a long moment. "You would attempt such a fusion of technologies?" "I've done stranger things. Last month I got a fusion reactor running using parts from 5 different manufacturers. Took some creative thinking, but creative thinking is what keeps us alive out here." Captain Rodriguez cleared his throat. "I'll leave you 2 to work it out. But remember, Marcus, we need all the allies we can get." He left, the bay doors sealing behind him. Marcus and Zarathul stood in awkward silence for several seconds. Finally, the Valdrani spoke. "Why do you offer aid? My people have never shown favor to humans." "Because you're hurt and I fix things," Marcus replied simply. "Doesn't matter if it's a hyperdrive or alien armor. Broken is broken." Something flickered across Zarathul's features, an expression Marcus couldn't interpret. "Your species is unexpected." "We tend to be." Marcus pulled up a work stool and gestured to a makeshift examination table. "This is going to take some time. The armor will need to come off so I can access the damaged components directly." Zarathul hesitated. "Valdrani do not remove armor in the presence of other species. It is inappropriate, I understand, but I can't fix what I can't reach." Marcus turned away, focusing on organizing his tools. "I'll work from behind. Keep my eyes on the components, not on you. This is about the repair, nothing else." Another pause, then the soft sound of alien technology disengaging. "Very well, human. But know that if you betray this trust, I will end you before your next breath." Marcus nodded without turning around. Understood. Now let's see what we're working with. As he heard the armor panels sliding away, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this repair would be about more than just fixing broken technology. In the depths of space, surrounded by enemies and uncertainty, perhaps trust was the most powerful tool any of them possessed.